En fait, oui, oui.
You switch it on once I'm on the...
C'est déjà activé, mais on l'entendra pas. C'est quand il commencera à parler qu'on va appuyer.
Okay. Hello, hello. So, welcome back, everybody. I don't know if my mic is already on. One moment. Welcome back, everybody, after the lunch break. I'm very pleased to be here and feel very honored. And it's really my special honor to introduce Adam Jarobas, who will give us now a key lecture. He's a member of the European Parliament for the European People's Party, representing Poland. And he established himself really as a key figure in health policy. He's currently chairing the European Parliament's Committee on Public Health, the SANT Committee, and previously was involved in the Special Committee on Beating Cancer, the Becker Committee. So he also serves on the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, the ITRE, and the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, ENVI. So we are very thrilled for your presence. Welcome very much, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm grateful for the organization, this prestigious conference, high-level meeting on rare disease, especially to my colleague from SANT Committee, former Commissioner Vytenis Andriukaitis. Thank you very much, Vytenis, for your leadership in this area in our committee and your passion in this work. Thank you, Professor Scarpa, also for your work and for yesterday's meeting in SANT Committee. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this year, starting on the International Rare Disease Day, SANT Committee launched online public consultation on rare disease dedicated to the patients, carers, healthcare professionals, and scientists. Over 4,000 participants from all 27 member states. Last week, we dedicated SANT sitting to present and discuss the result that I would like to refer to and comment. We know rare disease affect up to even 36 million of people in the EU, and only 6% of them have treatment options, with large differences in their availability between EU countries. Over 6,000 rare diseases have no treatment at all. Rare diseases may be rare compared to others, especially in smaller EU member states, but they are huge tragedies for the patients and their loved ones. Dramas of prolonged diagnosis lasting an average of even 5 years, hanging in uncertainty, lack of or unsuccessful treatment. Results of the SANT online consultations confirm this to be the top challenge. Our consultation indicate expectations to reduce inequalities between EU regions through harmonization to ensure that all rare disease patients have timely access to screening, diagnosis, care, and treatment in their member state or cross-border. Unfortunately, awareness of the current EU cross-border healthcare rights remains low and procedures complicated. Last week, we held an interparliamentary committee sitting in SANT with member states' national parliament, and those challenges clearly confirm with a growing expectation for the revision of the current EU cross-border health rules. We will work in Sand on a dedicated report on Parliament's position on the future of cross-border healthcare. Our Sand online consultations identified the lack of treatment, the limited availability and lack of access to existing treatments as key barriers, with the expectations to harmonize legislation, ensure timely EU-wide marketing authorization, and provide strong incentives for treatment development. I hope we can make progress here during the trilogue negotiations scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday this week on pharma package. I hope it could be last chance trilogues, but we will see. Sand online consultation confirmed the importance of developing a comprehensive European rare disease plan and encouraging member states to renew their national action plans. If we look from a wider time perspective over the last 25 years, the EU has supported research on rare diseases with the amount of 5.2 billion euro, and recently a new 7-year research partnership was launched, the European Rare Disease Research Alliance. Still, the needs remain unfulfilled, and the EU can play a pivotal role in supporting rare diseases research and treatment development. Participants of our SAND consultation see great potential for rare disease patients and research in the European reference networks that should be further empowered, supported and adequately resourced to expand their outreach and impact, including awareness raising, professional education, guideline development, and contribution to research. According to the results of our consultation, collaboration across specialists, centres, countries and sectors should be strengthened, including public-private partnerships. Respondents recommended to actively involve patients as equal partners in decision-making to align with their needs and priorities and support patients' associations. The Commissioner, during our plenary debate in Strasbourg, recalled the EU support for the European Reference Network. It's worth 77.4 million euro, which will run until 2027. It is still a challenge to integrating them into national health system. Thus, the EU is providing an additional 18 million euro until 2027 for the purpose. Our consultations indicate also that registers and data sharing were considered crucial, but legislative barriers must be reduced and sufficient financial and human resources are needed. We have high hopes that proper and swift implementation of the European health data space, for which legal framework was finalized under the Polish presidency, can help address those challenges, strengthening also progress in research on rare disease therapies. The participants of our SAND consultation indicated also the problem of the social inclusion of people living with their rare diseases, which in their opinion should be strengthened with the promotion of the integration in schools and workplaces, harmonizing disability recognition across the EU, facilitating disease recognition and providing caregiver support. Half of respondents reported discrimination, especially in healthcare, which should be a call for action. As indicated, regarding the EU cross-border healthcare, participants of our consultation also stressed that the awareness of existing EU initiatives is low, significantly limiting their impact. To address this, steps must be taken to improve communication and broaden the dissemination of knowledge and tools from EU-funded projects, which could already help meet several of the identified needs. Rare diseases are a challenge where simple economy does not work effectively. Small number of cases, data makes research difficult, and the small scale does not allow for a return on investment from mass sales, which makes therapies very expensive, limiting access. the answer to rare diseases may be more Europe. Together in the EU, we can study more cases, allowing for more effective development of therapies. Here we count on the European health data space. We need further coordinate and strengthen the European reference network at the EU level so that the doctors and researchers can exchange knowledge about rare cases, which we hope will improve and speed up diagnostic and the selection of therapies. So that the fate of patients is not determined by geography, so that proper diagnosis and therapy access is not dependent on the lottery of doctors available locally. A key issue is the adoption of European standard for screening, including newborns. We have dedicated a Sun sitting to this challenge last week. To sum up, many promising EU initiatives are ongoing. Additional solutions are surely needed, but it seems that we have already many parts that perhaps now need harmonization, coordination, and putting it all in a more coherent strategic plan. This is why, in SAND, utilizing the result of our public online consultation, we have decided to work on Parliament's position with recommendation for the Commission and the members on the future steps on rare disease. Thank you very much and wish you a fruitful debate.
Thank you very much for giving us these inspiring words and really being with us in this important cause for the year ends and for the improvement of the rare disease population and all their needs. May I call on stage the panel of the next session?
Did you know that Victor will replace Alexander Nats?
What?
Victor will replace Alexander Nats. It's Victor.
Victor.
Yes.
Ah, okay. All clear. Last minute changes. So welcome on stage. Just to set the scene, we do have now a very important topic that we are calling for. And we have found a nice acronym that we want to bring to your attention. We thought that the next logic step for year ends, as they were created and as they were evolving to create capacity on the national level, would be to call for comprehensive rare disease infrastructure clusters, in short, CORDICs. What does it actually mean and what is the intention behind? We are seeing in the 24 year ends that I have the pleasure to chair at the moment, and being chair of year end Betken myself, we all are working in our networks and we start to work across year ends, because many of the rare diseases are not only confined to the needs that we serve in one year end, we need to work across in partnerships. Hence, it's very logic to think together to create such infrastructure clusters, because it would help us enormously, first point, to create equity across Europe. What we would like to see is that every member state has at least one such comprehensive infrastructure cluster, bringing together the different year ends, building on common disease infrastructures that basically could be for the rare disease community, disease agnostic, and sharing all the important tools that you need to go from bench to bedside. That means we are starting with the fundamental research. We go the next steps to translational research. What we see there is obviously the benefits that we have from creating a biobank, again, at least one for the rare disease community, but also the technical infrastructures. Most importantly, as we had the clinical trial units already under this clinical trials under discussion, a common high-power clinical trial unit, because to perform clinical trials needs a lot of expertise and the right personnel to really be effective and to be fast, what we previously have actually addressed. So really investing in the advanced diagnostic laboratories for the field, again, is something which is disease agnostic and would help enormously to pool the resources that is needed in the rare disease arena. Such codecs will really have the capacity to pool a lot of the initiatives we have just mentioned, the newborn screening to really advance the very early diagnosis ideally with the right interventions, but also to integrate in such a structure the patient advocacy groups. I would see it in the way that a patient with an undiagnosed disease would have a very visible structure to go to, where he or she will be heard, diagnosed, and come into the right pathway in the right ERN and in a multi-professional and multidisciplinary manner to improve quality of life. So having said all this, I'm trying to come to my esteemed panel, and I would like to start out with my questions to address Adjon von Hengel. He is Senior Policy Officer for Health Innovations Ecosystems in DGRT Research. He is for a long time already involved in the European Commission since 2005, and he helps in the unit to foster development and uptake of breakthrough innovations. So if we tell you today about Cordic structure, how you feel about it, do you see there an opportunity?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation for this very interesting event. I think that what I've heard this morning is also that there's an eventum, and we really should capitalize on that momentum that we have and move forward with this. So rare diseases is an area where we need to work together. There's no other area in healthcare where that's so obvious, actually. And that is what we're trying to do. And that, of course, fits perfectly well into your aim to build an ecosystem for research on and for rare diseases, for which all people that are living with rare diseases can profit, because I think that's the central element. We want to have these people supported and helped so that they can have a proper diagnosis, that they can profit from the expertise that we have within Europe, that we can develop the diagnostics and the therapeutics that are needed. And again, that you can only do in a multinational approach. And that is what we're supporting through collaborative research. And again, that fits, of course, in the aims that you foresee also in your declaration. So we are working together on a global level because we're talking about Europe, but it's also important to quickly mention that Europe is not alone. We're working on a global level on the rare diseases in the ERDIRC initiative. But focusing more on Europe, I think that what we've done, we've supported the research in the rare diseases for some decades by now. But what has happened over that time? We've seen that from, let's say, individual projects, we're moving towards this ecosystem that you foresee as the future. Because we had, for instance, the ERNs that were established some 8 years ago. We have the European Joint Programming on Rare Diseases that put really different parts of European research together. And that also comes now to the next stage where we have ERDERA, where we have a collaboration between the ERNs and the member states, because it's very important to mention that this research does not only come from the EU side, but it also comes from the side of the member states. And again, the only way to forward is making sure that we don't duplicate, that we get the impact that we can have with the budget that are always limited. So ERDERA is really putting these member states, funders, and the Commission together, bring in the ERNs there, and also have the collaboration with the industry. So as you have heard from Daria already earlier this morning, how that is really structured. Next to that, we have to bring in the industry also. So what you heard in the previous panel, we have IHI that brings together, again, the academic and the SMEs that we have in Europe active in that area, together with the industry. And again, only that you can get over the hurdle of moving into the rare disease area, which is so challenging anyway. So if I'm looking a little bit to the future, then we see a lot of developments, and again, that brings that momentum. And I think we should talk up Europe indeed, and not talk down, as was mentioned before. We have new opportunities with the pharmaceutical legislation that's in this last stages of development, where we really look at also initiatives to boost research and innovation, to move forward with that. This is legislation that you set in place for many years, but you also need to have some flexibility within it to make sure that you can capitalize on the possibilities that the future is going to bring. And the regulatory sandboxes, for instance, is really an element where we see how can we make use of the novel technologies and work together with developers and regulators. So we have a close collaboration with the EMA also on these parts. The Biotech Act was already mentioned. Also here, of course, biotech is an area where we see that there's an economic potential, but it's of course also the potential to help our citizens and especially also people living with rare diseases. So these are a lot of policy legislative initiatives in the area for which we are seeing that it brings a huge potential to move forward. The other thing I would like to mention is the life science strategy that we launched earlier this year, which looks at different elements also that are really important. So, for instance, clinical trials. It has as one of its flagships a clinical trial research investment plan, because we need to boost our position on the area of clinical trials. It also wants to set up centers of excellence for ATMPs. And if you remember the slide that Richard Bergstrom showed this morning, that's an area where actually we're losing out. So we need to set up these centers pretty much in line with what you want to see also. We have to use the excellence that we have, bring that together, not only through the ERNs, but also in addition to that, through these centers of excellence. Then if we're looking even a bit further than that, so then we see the next framework program for research and innovation, and also the competitiveness fund, of course, that is on the future. And if you look in the documentation that has been launched on the competitiveness funds, you see that there are a number of moonshots in there. One of the moonshots is in the area of health, which is on regenerative medicine. So this is really aiming under the next framework program to move towards developing therapies for unmet needs, for really areas where we don't have solutions yet, and use also the biotechnological possibilities that we have in that area. So I mentioned a moonshot. I like the name of that because that also reminds me of the fact that if we are looking at rare diseases, actually we're looking at pioneers. So the same as going to the moon, you go to an area where nobody has been before, and that is what rare diseases is also doing. Because of the fact that you have only few patients per disease, you have to come up with ways to make the maximum use of that. So to use also the real-world evidence, to use the new setup for clinical trials in which we work together through our projects with the EMA. So it's really a challenge that we're going on, and I think we're very happy to do that together with you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for being very broad and embracing the multiple aspects, because I think what we really want to make very clear, we need the ERNs as a network, as a structure, but what we are already seeing today is that in some of the countries we already have sort of clusters. Yeah, we have universities with up to 20 ERN represented under one roof, and capitalizing on these resources, sharing resources, infrastructures for all the new things to come. You mentioned ATMPs, for example, has a wide likelihood if we invest in pre-existing structures to make them stronger. which does for sure not mean that we must not lose all the expertise centers that we have in the ERNs, because there are sometimes highly specialized units for a specific disease, which are really very important ingredients, yeah, to work together. And that's why it's not a center, it's a cluster to really unify, work together, and create momentum. Okay, having said this, I move to the second question that we prepared, and this is really to put together the idea with the clinical trial regulation now being in place, being meant a facilitator. Also in view of the forthcoming Biotech Act, what would be your perspective? So, Victor Mertens, I welcome you here, because on short notice you actually replaced Alexander Natz. Thank you for being here nevertheless. And I give you the floor to give your perspectives, what benefits we potentially could see in such codex structures.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting Alex, and happy that UCOPE could contribute to the conversation. Again, it's always hard to follow the two of you. I think there's a lot been said already as to what we need to do. But I think if I look at it from the industry perspective, and I think Ruth, you said it really nicely, it's that building that clustering. It's not just one or two things, it's bringing it all together. And I think to me, if I look at what could make that successful, what impact that could have from a developer standpoint, I think one of the key elements is making sure we see those clusters properly integrated into the healthcare system. We've seen that have benefits on both the research as well as the care front. And when I look at some of the challenges we've seen, some of the barriers that developers face when we're going through the rare disease ecosystem, challenges like you've rightfully mentioned, the diagnostic odyssey, making sure we can find the patients that we need. But also from a clinical side is patient recruitment, patient identification is a huge bottleneck when it comes to rare disease drug discovery and clinical trial frameworks. It can add months, if not years, to development programs. So being able to use the expertise that's there is absolutely essential. And I know we'll get to it in a bit as well, but to me, Cordic is not just the natural follow-up of the ERNs, or builds on the ERNs kind of potential, but by building on initiatives like Together for Rare and the initiatives we had there about bringing the excellent knowledge from the academic side, the clinician side, and the developer side together, we can really accelerate drug discovery and access to care in that way as well. So to me, this is really the only way to operationalize some of the key elements that hopefully we'll see in the Biotech Act and the streamlining of the clinical trial regulation. But without that infrastructure in place, we're not going to address the fragmentation. And I do want to also jump in on the diagnostics piece, and as MEP Aruba said, we want to make sure we improve that inequality in disease screening and diagnostics. And we'd love to see, at least from UCOPE's side, more harmonization amongst who and what is diagnosed. And I think this could play a role in that. If we have those centralized hubs in each member state, we can start to indeed help to close the gap between those differences. If every member state, doesn't matter where you're born, has one, you know you've got the expertise and you know you're not going to be impacted as much by that diagnostic odyssey. And I think the other piece, I think, to me that's key, and something I was reflecting on before coming on stage was, I don't know those notes, was some of the successes we've seen in other jurisdictions when it comes to clinical trial success and development. Thank you very much. If I look at what we see in the UK, for instance, having pre-qualified stage 1 clinical trial centers has been essential to getting clinical trials off the ground. So if we have one place we can go to and we know that's where we've got the expertise, the knowledge, it might not mean it works for every developer, but it makes it that much easier and it can help improve the clinical trial ecosystem as well. And doing clinical trials in a country or in a region makes it easier to launch there as well. So it fully fits together. It's a virtuous cycle that reinforces each other. So to me, these kind of networks are essential to every part of it, and everyone has a part to play in doing that. I'm just checking if there's anything else. I do want to actually jump in on the Erdera part as well. I think to me that was a true change in the way that we saw the EU tackle rare diseases. By having industry for the first time involved in such a project was crucial. And I think that shows that multi-dimensional element of it, and hopefully, and I see Cordex and the kind of the natural evolution of the ERNs therein playing an even bigger role. But I'll stop there as well before diving into it.
For me, it's very important to really make the point Codecs are not meant to replace ERNs, not at all. Yeah? They are just on the national level comprehensive infrastructures to go to the next steps. Because in the early years, we are created with a focus on care. And industry was a little bit questioned what the role could be. But I think the understanding today is very clearly we all need to work together across health in all policies and bringing all these initiatives together to have this bench-to-bedside developments. And for this, we can share infrastructures, yeah, which are really important elements for diagnosis, but also for treatment development and devices, not to be forgotten. Yeah? And I think having this visible access point for everybody will be an added value, yeah, that in part already naturally evolves or has evolved in some countries, but would need investment really in all member states to have at least one such structure, because that really would create major equity across Europe in terms of access. So thank you very much. I think here I can move to my next question, and this is about evolving. Having been on the Cancer Mission Board, I think when we started to work there, we said we have to have a vision, but we have also to be concrete. And being concrete means have a clear idea on where to go. And so in the Cancer Mission, we were thinking about these comprehensive cancer centers. And it's for me a big pleasure to see, yeah, what the development was. And with this, I address my question for the point of view of Georgios Makititis, who is with us from HADEA. He is head of sector in the Health and Digital Executive Agency since 2021 and has overseen more than 1 billion EU funded awarded to the EU for Health program. So if you see all these actions, please give us your vision and impression. Can we make it? And I think we should make it to create such innovation and structures. Please.
The short answer is yes, you can. Absolutely, and you should. Just to add that my sector has the responsibility for non-communicable diseases, cancer, mental health, rare diseases. So I come some 2 weeks ago, we had exactly the first annual meeting of the joint action of the Comprehensive Cancer Network. So they met in Paris. The ambition of the joint action is to have, by the end of the joint action in 4 years, 100 comprehensive cancer centers certified, covering 90% of the cancer patients in Europe. So it's a huge target. And the sense I got in the meeting is, this is something that is really going to happen. So a very, very strong dynamic. And it's very interesting to see that, in fact, what they had behind their mind was the trailblazing of the European reference networks. This is the model on which they are trying, with the specificities of the two disease areas, to build for cancer. So, and yesterday I was in Luxembourg, where they were having the 10-year anniversary of their National Cancer Institute. And they are participating now very actively in this joint action, and through the example of a small country that has limitations in the cancer area, they are prefiguring what you are proposing here. In fact, they have one main public hospital and 3 other hospitals, but in order to ensure equitable access, they are going to create a comprehensive cancer center infrastructure. So they are going to pool all the resources that they have at the national level with the National Institute of Health, with the National Research Foundation, with the patient representatives and organizations, with the National Health Laboratory, with all the capacity. They are pulling it together in one, not entity, because they are separate legal entities, but in one infrastructure to deliver what is necessary for a small-scale country. So I can fully understand, and I can see really this linkage of something that can happen and that can become an accelerator. I see a very nice balance between the disease-specific knowledge of the specific centers and units in the departments in the hospitals, the members of the RNs, and then the need to scale up and to pool resources to achieve the critical scale, because that is what is missing in terms of the research and innovation. Sometimes it's a critical scale, pulling the resources together, get the number of patients that we need, and be able to develop the new knowledge and bring the innovation to the bedside. One last point I have to add is that, in fact, we have also EU-level infrastructures that we're putting in place. They might not be physical things. We have the European Health Data Space. This is also going to be there. It will happen. So I see the reference networks and the comprehensive cancer centers as a kind of middleware, like in IT. So you have EU-level infrastructures. They are the operating system. We develop applications, things come down the pipeline, but there needs to be a back and forth between what is happening at the top level and what is going to finally trickle down, and you need to have a feedback loop all the time. We saw that in terms of medicines being authorized for a small pool of patients. You will need to revisit. How are you going to revisit? How are you going to collect the data to revisit your marketing authorization and to see the premise with which your drug has received authorization and has been made accessible and is available to the patients? Keeps it promised? Do we need to change something? So you need a feedback loop, and in order to have that, you need different layers to come together. And I think that especially in the area of rare diseases, clustering is really necessary because you need both the specificity and the pooling. So yes, you can and you should.
Thank you very much. So this is really very much in the idea that those clusters should have like lighthouse character, be like power plants where you energize really the resources and can have the right investments. Holm, you have been previously introduced, ERN coordinator of the rare neurological diseases. You are very deeply involved in diagnostics in many fields. So can you give us your thoughts what such an integration could mean for the future to bring really the ERNs for the benefits of patients to the next level?
Yeah, thanks. Let me kind of the previous speaker try to develop first some structural thoughts and then try to think how that could work. So now we have, and on the European level, we have the European reference networks, which are primarily focused on care and deliver. And I think I emphasized that already, and I will be in the next session as well. Then in Jardin, which is the joint action for the integration of the national reference networks, of the European reference networks with the national healthcare systems, we actually developing national reference networks. So now we have two kinds of structures already, so on national level and on European level. And the question is, how fit Codex into that kind of structure? And I believe they do, and I believe they do because when it comes to integrating care, research, and innovation, we need this kind of integrated or comprehensive rare disease centers to be able to deliver also on the link between care, research, and innovation. And only then I think it will be working. And I think we should be pretty certain about that investment into research and innovation is quite high. To do that in all national reference network centers or in all European reference network centers will not work. So I think a centralization of resources in that respect should take place. And that actually refers to both to diagnostic research and innovation and also to therapy development research and innovation.
Thank you very much. So I think ERNs are aligned, that we have here really a high need to be addressed. And with this, it's my pleasure to introduce Jacques Demont. We are knowing each other already for a long, long time from different projects, and having built the ICRA structure was an extraordinary undertaking. And we are missing out today on Mark Turner, who would have presented the pediatric world, but he can't be with us for family reasons. So we too have the task to cover the field, what ICRA has developed, and how you would see the synergies with such Codex from your experience and view. Please, Jacques.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion. So we are here to speak about rare disease, and when the disease is rare, the patients are rare, but the medical expertise is also rare. So all the clinical trials on rare disease should be run at multinational level in Europe, taking advantage of the population size of the European Union, 450 million plus other countries, meaning something bigger than the United States. So we have really the potential of being the leader worldwide in terms of clinical trials for rare disease. But this requires to have some level of organization and some infrastructure, and in a nutshell, to make sure that we build on existing organization, that we coordinate this organization, not that much at national level, but rather at pan-European level, that we avoid duplication and that we avoid fragmentation. So what is currently in place for rare disease, and you will see that rare disease is a pioneer when compared to the common disease, where a lot of the elements I will mention are now missing. The first element is ECRIN. The organization I'm in charge of is an organization with a legal status of European research infrastructure, and whose mission is to support multinational clinical trial. But we support the trial management, we support the sponsor, we don't support the investigator. So this is perfectly clear. ECRIN is a federation of clinical trial units located in the different countries. We have 130 clinical trial units as affiliated partners, and we are able to provide services to the sponsor in the multinational clinical trials. You know that in Europe there is a single sponsor for multinational clinical trials, so the pharma company have solution to manage the trial, but for SMEs and even more for academic, this is really a major challenge. And the role of ECRIN is to support the sponsor and to make it possible for a sponsor in a given country to act as a sponsor in other countries. So we provide very technical services that are totally disease agnostic, meaning regulatory, ethical, monitoring, vigilance, data management, data sharing. All these services are totally independent of the disease area, the patient population. In addition, we develop tools that facilitate the conduct of the trial, meaning data management tools and so on. So I will not enter into the details. So this is the first step. ECRIN is more or less the smuggler for clinical trial. We just make it possible for the clinical trial to cross the border. This is not enough. This is not enough because we don't take care of the investigation. So the investigation is supported by two other partners. The first one is the C4C. C4C is a foundation now under Dutch law, but it is the outcome of an IMI-funded project. And in this IMI-funded project with the industry, the objective for the industry was to make sure that the quality of investigation at site was optimal, that there was enough training, that the network would be able to perform site selection and so on. This is in a nutshell. Of course, there are many other activities in the C4C Foundation, but the C4C is also disease agnostic, but it is pediatric specific because C4C stands for Connect for Children, and the C4C is able to ensure the quality of investigation. But again, this is not enough. What is missing now is the scientific content and the access to patient. And this is provided by the ERN, meaning the role of the ERN is to be disease specific and to be composed of scientists, and the scientists have the capacity to design the scientific content, meaning what are the priorities in terms of scientific questions to be addressed through clinical trials, and they have also the access to patient, either for industry sponsors sponsored trial or for investigator-initiated trials. So these are the three components, and this exists for rare disease. Of course, it could be improved, it could be enlarged, it could be better coordinated or better funded, but this exists for rare disease, and this does not exist for common disease. There are some countries having developed, for instance, a network specific for Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis, but the pan-European coverage is totally absent for the time being, and this is something that the European Commission should also consider, meaning funding a pan-European investigation network in a given disease area. But this is a very, very attractive example. And then what is still missing? What is missing now is the funding, meaning that there is not enough funding for the time being for clinical trials on rare disease, either for innovation trial, and especially the SME-driven innovation. There are some funding schemes like the accelerator grant in EIC, but they are not totally adapted for clinical trial because the duration of the grant is too short, because the volume of funding is maximum 2.5 million. So there is a need to really reconsider and reinvent the funding mechanism for the innovation trials, especially in the field of rare disease, but not only. And the second point is that there was, during the Horizon 2020 program, there were regular calls for clinical trials on rare diseases. And each call corresponded to 60 million euros funding 10 clinical trials with a pivotal budget of 6 million. So this was something very comfortable. Of course, it's not enough, but it's already. And then this disappeared after the COVID crisis. And now, so we have the RDERA partnership, but RDERA will launch a call this summer. I don't know if there are other calls planned in the course of the RDERA, but there is a need to have more funding mechanism, either based on the combination of national funding plus co-fund, because without co-fund it doesn't work. You know, in 2016 there was an ERANET for rare disease called eRare, and we had a call for clinical trials without co-fund, and it was very difficult to find a way to fund the trial without having a flexible budget from the co-fund. So this is one of the mechanisms. Another mechanism would be just to have a common pot, or another mechanism would be to have countries allowing cross-border funding, meaning that my country retain the scientific leadership and retain the intellectual property, but whether the patients are recruited in my country or the neighboring country or in Australia or in the moon doesn't matter. What matters is to have the patient on board. So some countries have understood that this cross-border funding mechanism is positive, but this is not for the time being the common practice. But really the funding is now something critical for rare disease research.
I couldn't agree more, because I think what we are seeing, we were asking in previous session, what is missing to accelerate? And this is really investment in infrastructures, because in the many calls that we have for clinical trials, it addresses a consortium, and hopefully the consortium has a lot of things in place. But then the trial runs, and then it goes away again. But if we have a strong investment in such cluster structures, this guarantees sustainability over a long time. And this is what is really needed to enable everything that we discussed in the previous sessions. Yeah, so we need this strong support and investment into innovation and research by forming such structures, disease agnostic for the rare disease field, to have the capacity really and the sustainability on the longer run. Having said this, I'm coming to you, Virginie. You also have already been presented. Welcome also on this panel. You're the currently Chief Executive Officer for Eurodis, Rare Disease Europe. I'm very happy you're here with us, and I would like to invite you to give us your perspective on such ideas that we try to bring through.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Ruth, and thanks for bringing together this discussion on the Codex. Maybe trying to answer, I will step a bit back on how we did prepare for the Biotech Act, which was already mentioned. Sorry for the voice. Better, yeah, which was already mentioned several times. Just to say, I think we are living at the moment really momentum maybe of really a lot of important, very important policy files that are in the making or about to close. I think the Biotech Act is really one of those. So just to, again, put ourselves in the shoes of Eurodis and our member when we did prepare for the answer to the Biotech Act, and I promise I end up with the Cordix. But we really we are considering that rare disease, as we know, are really driver for innovation. I think in terms of number, what I have got here is that in the TMPs that have been approved until now, 2/3 of them have an orphan designation, so it's really quite significant. It's not only about medicine, but rare diseases are indeed blueprint as well for diagnosis. Also, and with, as we know, very strong spillover effect on the common disease. So whether it is about innovation, whether it is about infrastructure, and how it can be applied to other fields. So with all this in mind, we also had very strongly that still we lack a lot of resource. Let's say that in terms of treatment, for example, if I continue on my numbers, less than 6% of rare disease have a treatment, as we already heard. So there is clearly something to do. And in our context of rarity, clearly the answer has to be found with an EU-level action. So that's how we approach the answer to the Biotech Act, the fact that no single member states alone could address the challenges in itself, but that we really need to pool expertise, to pool data, to pool infrastructure. And well, that's how we came to this strong advocacy towards building EU capacity for technology platforms. So that's also linked with, I'm arriving to Cordix like I was saying to you, that's also linked to the fact that, well, we know that for researchers and small developers, there is often a lack of access to GMP facilities. Manufacturing, there is often a lack of access to expertise in regulatory, lack of access to sustainable financing, it was already mentioned, and which means that we waste time because people are repeatedly rebuilding the same things, trying to patch with the same answer. So that's the reason why we have this flagship of technology platform in mind. But now what I think is that when I read Cordix and putting together everything we have heard, if you combine this idea of technology platform, if you combine what we have already, the ERNs, ERDERA, EQUIN, C4C, and so on, then we kind of have the Cordix. So I do think we are all going in the same direction, but I really would like to outline that yeah, I mean, this opportunity with the Biotech Act, it's really something that goes in the same line. Then if I can continue, I might have a few comments on, I was very, very genuinely interested in the fact that the proposal is to have one Cordix per country, because for me, even if for sure we need to have a EU-level approach, I wasn't sure if we could have replicated the exact same kind of Cordix in each country. So that's something probably for the discussion when we will put more meat around the concept. But then I thought that it makes me think a bit of what we have with the executive agency, like the EMA that is in the Netherlands, the food agency that is in Italy, and so on. So that's really something that I'm throwing here. It's like, what will be serving the patient? Because having one Cordix in each country, for sure, that's really a call for equity, but do we have countries that will benefit from having specificity? And then again, I'm bringing this notion of cross-border clinical trials, cross-border healthcare that is fully functioning, and then if one country has more expertise in one aspect, then maybe we should really take advantage from that. And finally, I'm coming to the patient. So when we worked at Eurodis to build our advocacy for the Biotech Act, but also nowadays that we are advocating for the MFF. So we, by the way, are also asking for more visibility for rare disease and ERNs. We've worked very much with our national alliance. So in all this idea of Cordix, I saw you were mentioning EPACs. For sure, they are constituents of the ERNs collaborator in those networks already. But I was also thinking that we must not forget the National Alliance. We must not forget that this comprehensive center will take place in countries where they have also national plans for rare disease and so on. So I really do think that we also need to think of this type of clustering approach. So maybe I will stop here, but thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and I think by content we are very much aligned, because I think Cordix could really also attract EPACs on working together on the national level, because there's a lot of knowledge sharing across diseases. Currently, I think it's all of overcoming silos, because I'm also in my country working with patient groups, and the tendency is there's the focus on the disease that they feel close to, because of affected family member, or so there's a big investment, but see this common good and the commons all together, and then create also a momentum of support, because I think we're asking a lot of our patient advocates, and also see the need to support them, because very often they're coming out of their normal professional life, and then we are asking all types of expertise work from them. So I think in such a cluster organization, we also could have the right funding to support those important voices in our community, to bring really their knowledge and expertise to develop what is on the scale. And that goes again from clinical trials, ATMPs. I think as you, I could talk a long time, and I'm trying to hold back for the reasons of time. But I think developing on this further is really rich, and could be potentially a big gain for everyone. I had one more question prepared, but sadly we are missing out on Together for Rare. Because we have the season of flu, so people sometimes just cannot come. And I think by what we learned in the previous discussion, I think there is already quite a lot of work and think tank work done within this consortium that will quite naturally feed into creating these structures, because a lot of comments are already identified, calling for a comprehensive rare disease action plan, then sharing preclinical knowledge, research, and registries, fair data, name it. I think it's all ultimately about capacity building and sharing and getting the momentum and accelerate. Okay, so having said this, let's see how we are doing time-wise. Pretty good. We have been catching up a little bit with 2 speakers less. I think the organizers will be happy about us. So I think we could have, for the summaries, I think just to recall, this could be a really forward-looking investment, being a focus of acceleration in each of the member states. I was impressed also on the Cancer Mission Board how some widening countries have developed over time with wonderful infrastructures that made almost me jealous. And I think creating such equity could also really foster the investment in the widening countries. I mean, they will grow. Probably we will have some of these clusters in the economically well-resourced countries, but helping the others to come along will, on the long term, also prevent the, as much as cross-border is important for us to have close by, or at least in the same country, in the same language, a structure that guides you the way to the networks as needed, I think could be highly beneficial on the national level. Okay, so I think we have now to ask, are there any questions from the audience? Or from the virtual audience, but we take the audience and then the virtual audience.
Yeah, we have all of them here, I believe, if everyone submitted. I think the questions are a bit practical, I guess. So, for example, we have someone asking what would be the vision in Cordex for hospitals? Are they just venues for trials and care? Or should they be co-architects of the clusters? What would be their role? There's another question which is about how would these clusters interact with ERNs? How would be the funding shared between ERNs and these clusters, Cordex? And then are registries included as part of these infrastructures? So very practical questions, I guess, from the audience and how it could work.
Yeah, so I think this is really important for clarification. Cordex are not should not replace ERN structures per se, but benefit of the multiple layers of ERNs already being in a region, working together, sharing infrastructures. So there is not competitiveness, and clusters will benefit of high expertise centers in a special disease area. They will know where they are, but it's really about building a cluster to share important infrastructures. It's not replacing at all ERNs. It's not replacing ERN units, because we need them in their expertise as they stand. We are talking here really about an infrastructure focus to share modern diagnostics, biobanks, and so on. Daria.
Thank you so much. So actually, I have question and comments. So first of all, I really like the idea. I really like the idea of Cordex, because I think, and this is what we are kind of now also mapping, that when we look at the national level, we really need to bring those capacities together. And for me, it is really connected to to the clinical infrastructure, to the diagnostic infrastructure, to the research infrastructure, and all those elements. So my question is, how do you, it's a little bit question, comment. I mean, first of all, what we do in ERDER, for example, with the national MEO groups, I think that we have this, for example, this survey on mapping also on the different things that are happening at national level. So I don't know what is the next step that you are planning for this, but we could think about, how we can map the full, to the extension possible, what's there already at the national level, how this can be better, let's say, organized, or how can we leverage these capacities. But I was wondering then if there are already any ideas about how potentially this would be governed and nominated, because we know that, for example, for the European reference networks, we had a very, let's say, structured process, right, with a specific nominations for the centers and so on. And so here, in a way, we don't want to kill the thing with the administrative burden, right? So we want to make sure that actually this is something that will be dynamic, potentially changing, potentially maybe smaller, bigger, depending on the country. So are there any views on this? Can you give us some insights of how you want to organize this? And maybe one last comment. Why not, and I don't know if this is something that was already, you thought about it or not, why not to have our board of member states, right, of the ERN sit together maybe with the governing board of ERDERA, so like that you bring those different components from the governance, I mean member states level, to sit together and talk about it, because what we want is also to strengthen the national capacities. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the worthwhile comments. I think we have hands raised. This is very good. So we go by Alexis and then back to the plenary.
Yeah, I think that both the questions that came from those that follow us at a distance and from Daria, this is the work that we still have to do. And you're right, I don't think that the ERNs can be mixed with the Cordex for the very simple reason that the ERN is a network. The Cordex is supposed to be one structure in a country that includes members of the ERNs, I mean medical teams, probably under the same roof. The roof doesn't need to be at the same place. It can be, it can vary from country to country, smaller countries, bigger countries, what do they, but the idea, if I understood your idea well when you suggested it, is to have a roof where 24 members of different areas of disease, plus the research, plus the care, plus whatever, are under the same roof, and they are interlinked between the countries. So this is the work we need to do from now on, to define it a bit better. What do we understand? But the concept is there, that if we want to combine care, research, innovation, patient needs, and so on, we need something that puts all these people together per country, no matter the size of the country, and then, of course, interlink them, which can happen because the ERNs are already interlinked at the European level as networks, from the medical point of view at least, and they are the same that do the research. I mean, we don't need to invent that.
And hopefully it will help enormously to invest in research and innovation. Yeah, because this is then really the shared structure where we can link the resources, because the hardest thing to get is infrastructure funding. Yeah, if you have a brilliant idea on innovation, fine. Yeah, but to have all the supportive structure that you need, and if you share them, this is a major added value that puts together the glue of what is still missing. So we had 2 comments here from the plenary.
Just you first. Okay.
You and then, because before I spoke first, and so your turn.
Okay, so my turn. So I've got a mic already. So I had a very similar comment to what Alexi just explained, and linking the national structure or structures with CODIX and the European reference networks. And I think the emphasis that this is really something different to the ERNs, I think is more than valid, and I think should be kept in mind, because we're talking here building national research and innovation structures which are using the ERNs and also national reference networks. And then the next thought I had, and that's because I've got also a hat in Jardin, and actually I'm leading the work package on the development of national reference networks. We should actually take the CODIX along when we discuss the establishment of national reference networks in the different European countries, because that's, at least to a certain extent, should be either the same process or at least parallel processes. Because if we're now starting to develop clinical networks and kind of shape the network care in the respective member states, and then afterwards come up with the idea that we could actually build infrastructure for research and innovation using the formed networks, then again it's a kind of, trying to fit what is existing already with a new kid on the block. But I think if we take that along and see how that can actually be being developed together, at least discussed together, I think that might be then added value.
Very, very much meant so, because I think it cannot happen without the member state level input, because I think as far as this is to identify the relevant hospital structures on working together is very much a process that is ongoing also for the comprehensive cancer centers. Takes a while to sell the idea that everybody gets on the right mindset for it, but ultimately I think such structures are of really high value on the long term to be more competitive, to reach the numbers and to act together.
And maybe one last comment. At least for Germany, we should have more than one CODIC.
That's why we said at least one.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was very important, because we know in the ERNs we have a lot of discussions about partners, full members, affiliated partners that feel sometimes like second class is a lack of capacity, but opening up here an opportunity to create a cluster where you can cluster also different ERNs and invest in infrastructure. I think this is potentially for Europe a real added value.
I think at the center of it is a kind of tension. You have the university hospital, which is departments, that needs to do 2 things. It needs to develop frontier knowledge and to be a receptacle for every innovation that will come through it. And it needs to pass to the rest of the system. This knowledge, once it has digested it, it has introduced it in their regular standard of care, and needs to teach the rest of the system. Because otherwise the hospital will drown. It cannot be doing everything at the same time. So it's the same thing that we see in industry and services. The middle gets squeezed. So you need to, in brackets, commoditize what today we know we do well. We just need to teach the system to do it. Not necessarily in our pace, with our guidance, our labelization, our quality stamp, and we need to liberate resources from that, because we teach the rest of the system, to continue developing the new knowledge that will come through this research and innovation. And this is common to all areas of care, but indeed in cancer and in rare diseases, you see it very, very clearly, maybe because it is the nature of these disease groups.
Jacques.
Maybe, so if you have time, just one remark. It's not one question, but you mentioned the comparison with the Comprehensive Cancer Center. I think the ecosystem is somehow a bit different, because in the cancer center, the cancer just take care of cancer patients. So, and this is something that facilitates, because they can share a lot of common tools. Usually, the rare diseases are scattered in a pediatric hospital or in general hospital, and it's difficult to create the specificity and the critical mass. So this is something that dampen a bit the relevance of this comparison. And I have also another remark regarding the CORDIS, what is the acronym? The CORDIC. So I think in the field of clinical research, this is not just relying on CORDIC is probably not the best option, because we need the network, and the three categories of network I mentioned: supporting the sponsors, supporting investigation at site, and providing the scientific content. But I think one thing that could combine the network and the CORDIC is to have inside the CORDIC clinical trial units specializing in one or a small amount of rare disease, meaning having one specializing in cystic fibrosis and serving not only for the country but at pan-European level, because we don't need to have 10 clinical trial units able to design the trial in a given disease. Just one in Europe is sufficient, and this would be a way to share the workload and to share the expertise between the different CORDICs and the different countries, and be connected to the networks.
Exactly. I think it's here really about sharing the workload, and but also passing on the knowledge and having enough expertise at site. Because currently sometimes we have brilliant researchers in, let's say, not the biggest university hospital, where you are lacking all the clinical structure and infrastructures to move forward to the next steps, and have already in the national on the national level a point of access, where you could find the facilities, the support for all the multiple levels that are needed, would be a highly added value and accelerator.
And also for investments. So thinking of academic drug development, and that happens as well. Having GMP facilities which do the respective toxicity and also the respective manufacturing processes, and are capable to do so. I think that just needs major investment, and it makes a lot of sense to just have it at a few centers in the countries and not spread around, and that in a coordinated manner. So that's again an argument for having CORDICs, in particular on innovation and research.
Excellent. I think with this we have addressed all the questions. We are back on track time-wise. So thank you very much for all your contributions. And I can invite you to a coffee break, which gives you half an hour. Be back at 5 p.m. sharp, please.